I've seen a handful of PC gamers release statements celebrating the rise of PC. Like, ooh, PC is doing better than PlayStation and Xbox. Clearly, we're dominating the console space. Clearly, Nintendo is doomed. And the reality of the situation is, as always, quite a bit different. PC is not succeeding. PlayStation and Xbox are failing, which is a completely different issue, which people really need to wrap their little minds around and really need to understand that PC is not and never will be competitive with Nintendo hardware. Nintendo hardware can innovate. It's much more affordable. It has way better games, more versatility, right? As we all know, the Switch 2 is slated to be a huge, huge success. Whatever cope that PC gamers have, going into this season, the reality is Nintendo is going to keep growing and growing and growing while the PC community continues to stagnate, putting out absolute bombs of consoles like the Steam Deck while struggling to reach even a third of the relevancy of Nintendo Switch, right? The highly, highly hyped up and sought after PC games, games like Witcher 3, Overwatch, Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, none of that really comes close to what Nintendo puts out. Most times Nintendo puts out bigger games than those multiple times a year. And that's kind of the reality of the situation we're in. Seeing Xenoblade Chronicles X, a decade later come out on Nintendo Switch and not only be a huge success story, topping the eShop charts, it's also way more technically demanding and bigger than everything else on competing platforms. It is bigger than Starfield, it is bigger than Baldur's Gate 3, it is bigger than Witcher 3, it's bigger than Skyrim, right? Red Dead 2, the reality is Xenoblade Chronicles X is bigger than that. And not only is that game better than all of its immediate competition, it also has gotten a number of sequels, all on the same platform. Xenoblade Chronicles 1 Definitive Edition, 2, and 3, all of which have just reached new heights on Switch and have really proven that Nintendo has complete dominance over the JRPG genre, right? They completely demolished Square. They stole their talent right out from under them, and now they are reaping that reward. And that is just one example of what's going on in the world of Nintendo. You will never get to play Xenoblade on PC. You will never get to play Fire Emblem. You'll never get to play Super Mario or The Legend of Zelda, right? It's over, right? New Nintendo consoles are going to continue to get made. They're going to continue to be successful. New Nintendo games are going to continue to do well and not be available on PC. And more, you will see Nintendo and its brands encroaching on other pieces of technology. Alarm clocks, merchandising, film, what have you. We're already starting to see the beginning of this. Recently, I've begun to realize just how the Pokemon trading card game has had this major renaissance because, all the propaganda we were told as kids, Pokemon's a dying fad. You don't need those cards. All of that has gone completely out the window, and more people are picking up the game all the time, and all of the misconceptions that were shoved in your face from the beginning are beginning to fall apart, and people are beginning to realize just how good the Pokemon TCG has been all this time, right? And the same can be true for the mainline games, the Pokemon brand as a whole, right? All of the narratives we have seen in regards to Nintendo and its brand have completely collapsed. This idea that PC gaming is growing and going to surpass Nintendo consoles is completely out of touch with reality. And I think you really have to understand that because PC is not a closed platform, because there isn't one company that produces PCs and makes all the money off of it, it doesn't matter how well the PC platform does, right? Because Valve is not competitive, because good old games is not, CD Projekt Red is not competitive because Blizzard is not competitive, right? The reality is all of the big major PC gaming studios are simply failing in the face of Nintendo. And the idea that people have that something's going to come out of the woodwork and demolish everything Nintendo has done, it's just not going to happen, right? The Pokemon thing is a really good example because over the past several decades, we've seen people throw out all these IPs, trying to diminish Pokemon's relevancy, trying to say it's dead, trying to say people have outgrown it or the games have gotten bad, and it's bigger than ever now. Not just with the video games, but with the animated series and the trading card game, right? People don't understand Pokemon's business strategy. The fact that it creates brand synergy throughout all of these different mediums that all collectively make Pokemon the biggest thing in the world, right? There is no getting around it. There is nothing PC has that even comes close to that. And Pokemon isn't the only thing that Nintendo has going for it, right? Mario's getting bigger than ever, Zelda, Fire Emblem, Metroid. The list goes on and on and on. And with the advent of the Switch 2, when you can see just how the entire industry is waiting for Nintendo to announce this thing and showcase all of its games for it, it's safe to say this platform is going to be a success and companies are going to be struggling to keep people invested in the PC gaming ecosystem when they have a superior option right in front of them. And that is what's going to happen, is that anybody who seriously plays gaming PC is going to be bombarded with the realization that the better games are constantly not being released for it. The new Zelda, new gaming IPs from Nintendo, just simply will not be available on PC. And eventually, anybody who owns both will eventually realize that they play way more on Nintendo Switch than they do on PC, right? That is the issue that these people cannot bring themselves to admit, is that the PC gaming ecosystem will coexist with the Nintendo Switch, but that doesn't mean that Nintendo is going to struggle or suffer. PC gaming will, right? PC gaming will not be able to remain competitive. It will not be able to outperform what Nintendo is doing. It doesn't matter how expensive your graphic cards are, or what game you're playing, or what you give your money to, what Kickstarter you support, right? It's all just going to end in the same way. Nintendo just doing better than you in some game you've probably never even heard of, right? The shocking thing about Xenoblade Chronicles X, if you really think about it, is that this was a niche game on Wii U when it first came out, and now it's very safe to say that by the time the sequel comes out, Xenoblade is going to be a major tentpole JRPG franchise for Nintendo and will likely go on to outperform a good chunk of its competition from other companies. Chief among them Bethesda, Larian, et cetera, et cetera. And Xenoblade is not the only IP that's doing that. Pokemon does that every single time, and Zelda does that every single time. We got a sequel to Breath of the Wild before, a sequel to Skyrim could even get off the ground, right? The difference in quality between Nintendo and PC is just impossibly wide. They have not been cultivating the teams to compete with such masterclass developers. And this is going to become more and more apparent as more and more people stop delusionally believing the lie that PC gaming is somehow superior. Because when you look at all these YouTubers, when you look at what all they're talking about and what they do with their time, what exactly are they playing? That is the real question here. Baldur's Gate 3 is 100 hours long. You can put more time than that into a Xenoblade game and not even really scratch the surface of it. I put about that much time into Xenoblade Chronicles 3, The inability of the PC master race to control the narrative is becoming more and more apparent, right? The reason you're seeing so many people online, advocate for the PC master race and advocate for PC gaming is because this is how they're spending their time. Watching YouTube videos, commenting on Harmon Smith videos, watching 6 hour streams talking about other men on the internet, right? This is the reality of the PC master race. They don't play games. They only hate yours.